So, Culture, do you have the numbers on hand?
Well, I have the numbers on hand. I have the numbers website up, and I was running a comparison of box offices. But which is this film is setting the box office on fire, and I like to do comparisons when I look at this so that we have something to compare it to. So as you can see here, Super Mario Brothers opened April 5th. It had a domestic opening weekend of $146 million compared to Frozen 2's $130 million. People are going to argue that's a 5-day open, and they'd be correct. But it also opened in fewer theaters, right? By my count, that's just about 100 less theaters or so about. And then it had huge global appeal at $377,628,000 so far. So it is well on its way to that $1 billion number that we thought that it would hit. But we can look at it in comparison to other things. Now, the Frozen 2 film, is kind of the gold standard for Disney. It's their highest grossing animated film at $1.4 billion, and it took it 7 days to get to $202 million, whereas it's day 5 for Super Mario Brothers is $204 million. Interestingly enough, the second most popular film for Illumination was Despicable Me 2, as far as box office is concerned. It took it 11 days to get just under $200 million, and then it started to flatten out. I would call this particular line here more like a SpaceX rocket shot, straight up. I don't know when it's going to start to taper, but if it stays on path with the way Frozen 2 performed, I have no doubts it's going to get well past 1 billion, possibly get to that magical $1.5 billion mark at the end of its run. I don't know. Anyway, there's the numbers as they were presented, and there you go.
Yeah. Script, anything to say about those numbers? What do you think about the trajectory?
It's definitely looking great for Universal and Illumination. And I actually kind of think because the Sunday numbers have been the same since Sunday morning, which means like no one actually had purchased a ticket or seen the movie yet on Sunday. So they're all speculative. I think that number is probably going to be a bit higher once the finals come in. Part of me suspects it might be in the early 40s overall, because you're looking at only a 2 million discrepancy between Friday and Saturday. So we'll have to wait and see. I think it's going to have a pretty good trajectory. One thing to note is that there is a fairly noticeable price difference in ticket sales between when Frozen 2 came out and when Super Mario Brothers does. So that also has to be taken into account. I would say matching those up, that's probably on a very similar track.
Yeah. So, something that stands out to me here, and Script is right about one thing, except for it did a hell of a lot better on Saturday, because that Friday, doesn't that have Wednesday and Thursday in it?
It does. Yeah,
that means that it went and doubled pretty much probably from Friday to Saturday, because we know it did 26 million on Wednesday, and then what did it 30?
It did.
It's
under
missing
30.
Wednesday then, I think.
Well, the Friday numbers include all the first 2 preview days. Just by rule. So I would say when you look at these numbers, the Saturday number is probably the most telling. I think you eyeballed it really well there, Tom. And I also think Script is right. I think this number is going to go up. I think that this.
Well, and we did a poll last night with roughly 500 people listening.
Right.
And we did seen it, gonna see it, and not gonna see it. And the seen it and not gonna see it were right around 25%, to where the planning on see it was 55% roughly. Wow. So that means there's a lot of people yet who haven't seen this movie. So that means it's got some legs.
That's crazy. I have some anecdotal information that I think is interesting. I went and saw a movie on Saturday afternoon. It was a 4 p.m. show of how to blow up a pipeline.
Oh, boy.
A conversation for another time. But in any case, what was interesting was, first of all, the theater was packed. I mean, it was just very busy on a Saturday afternoon. Not surprising. A lot of families and kids. But the thing that stood out to me, it was very interesting. It was at the AMC in Burbank, AMC Burbank 16. And there are 2 lines. They have your A-list premier members, which are people who regularly go. They subscribe to the service so you can see up to 3 movies a week for $25. But what was fascinating was how long the non-A-list line was, just regular folks, which tells me A lot of people are coming to the movies. They're not members of AMC A-List. They're just going to a movie. So that line was long. It was crazy because it was people that are just, maybe they hadn't even been to the movies in a year or longer. You know, like this brought them out to the movies. And I usually go see films at this particular theater, which is one of the biggest theaters in Southern California. And it was just very interesting. I've never seen that line that long. Just little thing worth noting.
I noticed that kind of similarly, Chris, because I went Wednesday afternoon, and I went to what would have been the very last 3D showing before school got out. And I actually had a private screening, but there was also like a half a dozen or more theaters also showing the movie already. So I wasn't thinking nothing on
Did that include a lap dance, Tom?
Oh boy!
I wish. For that price, it should have. But anyway, when I stepped out, it was exactly like you were saying, Chris. When I first got there, it wasn't that busy yet. Like I said, school was still in session here during the week. When I got out, the lobby was chock full of kids. And I mean chock full of kids. I could barely, I had to go around.
Well, a hit movie requires multiple viewing. People come back. It's not just one view. So, I mean, is this going to bring the same people back again and again to view it multiple times?
I think it's safe to say yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would submit that the parents are probably happy seeing this movie one time, but kids freaking love this movie, and kids aren't going to want to wait for streaming. They're going to want to see it again in theaters with some different friends. They're going to nag their parents till they go. I think that alone right there secures repeat viewings, especially considering there's no real competition until Guardians of the Galaxy Part 3, also starring Chris Pratt, in a month.
Yeah, wow. I am saying what a lot of people I've heard say already. They've seen it 2-3 times already, and they plan on going again in some other format or something like that. So I have a feeling this movie has some potential. I don't know about all over, but I think domestically it will beat Avatar 2.
Well, and I think so. And here's the interesting thing: it made $21.6 million alone just on IMAX screens.
Well, this is a great movie for parents to drop their kids off at the theater and spend a good 90 minutes with themselves, and then go pick up their kids.
Why would someone watch a Super Mario movie on IMAX? Is it just the animation quality?
I would. Well, the animation quality is top notch. I mean, look at the fur pattern on his cat suit here.
Well, we've had that since Monsters Inc. Really.
Yeah.
Not just that, Paul. People are looking for all the Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Ah, right.
There's a lot in this. There is a lot.
Chock full of Easter eggs.
But now, if they could only find a way to transfer this to real life while they're in line, people jumping up and fisting the air and getting coins.
Right.
See,
that's a great idea. Like Nintendo should have like a virtual like augmented reality Easter egg thing, kind of like
they got that. It's called Universal Studios.
Yeah, Nintendo World opened this weekend as well, didn't it?
Yep. Hollywood, and then you have Epic Universe, which has its own version of Nintendo Land. That's coming up in less than 2 years. Not only that, and I think Tom pointed it out, and some other people that I've spoken with have talked about it. There's companion advertising that goes with this. There's a game that you can download. There's downloadables, I think, that for the Switch and other ways that you can access the content.
Tom, what's his face teased that? Remember?
Yeah. So this is big. This is big for Nintendo, and it's big for Universal, and it's gonna go for a long time. But they know how to cross market. Disney used to do this. Universal is now doing this. Disney doesn't do it anymore. It's amazing. Like I said, 377 plus worldwide. And that's without knowing the real numbers.
What ancillary products does Disney have that anybody wants with any of their stuff?
Well, they abandoned successful projects along the way, or projects that were at least cross promotional. They had their own version of the Amiibo, where you could go and buy the little figurine and then add them to your game.
Right. And we used to buy Disney DVDs for the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, 3D game DVDs.
Yeah. And they don't lean into that anymore.
They don't know how to do it.
One brilliant piece of cross promotion that was attached to this movie, at least where I saw it in Norway, I'm sure it must have been everywhere else as well, was a Nintendo Switch commercial that I have never seen in cinemas before. But here was a Nintendo Switch commercial highlighting like the most popular games, biggest brand, your Super Mario, your Zelda, your Mario Kart, your Nintendo Sport, all of that jazz, and like continue the adventure at home. That was kind of like the tagline there. It was brilliant. This is something that Disney should have done, and I never understood why Marvel didn't do that. Like, why didn't they have like a stand with like comic books for sale or like free comic book releases or something like that to tie in with their biggest Marvel
Well,
release?
I'll give you the reason.
Yes, go for it.
It's because nerds aren't running the shop anymore.
Right.
Because you know, when you've got nerds in marketing and you like this stuff, and the original Star Wars movie had glasses from Burger King, and it was just a complete wonderful experience. The Toy Story movies had all these toys that you could buy. It was part of the joyous experience of watching Toy Story. I mean, yeah, it was a really big surprise when Sid's toys. That there were no Sid toys, and everyone was going, well, where the hell is Sid's toys? So, there was a synergy going back and forth between what the audience wanted and what they eventually supplied. Disney's completely disinterested in this. I think, I mean, it's, I'm not trying to plug my recent video, but it's the war on men. So somehow, if you've got a bunch of nerds wanting to geek out on this stuff, you're going to make product that they geek out on, and then they want all these ancillary bits and pieces that celebrate the initial launch of a movie. You could get game. I mean, Nintendo is brilliant with creating, the Game Boys at the time where it would have a skin of a specific.
Yeah.
So you would get multiple Game Boys because you wanted all the different Game Boys with the different skins. Disney doesn't know how to do this anymore because they don't have geeks and nerds running anything. They've been lobotomized.
Go ahead, Tom.
No. Go ahead and finish up, Culture.
Oh no, I was just going to say I agree but they kind of abandoned this a while ago when they decided to create walled gardens, and all the studios are responsible for that because they don't want to venture outside of their brand. They want to control their brand completely. And if you do that effectively, and you are diversified in a way that makes sense, it's great. But by allowing for places like GameStop and other stuff like that to be removed from the conversation, you're not going to get the plates that you can replace on your PS5 that has the latest Disney thing or even the latest Nintendo thing. You have to actually go out and try to find somebody that's beneficially licensed that makes that stuff, and it's not readily available because you don't have a retail location that sells it.
Well, but like I said, I think culturally, internally, they're just not interested in this stuff. I was in the CD-ROM business, programming CD-ROMs. We had a game out there, and Disney, I think, outsourced the programming of their CD-ROMs, and one day they brought them all in-house, and then they all died.
Yeah.
They don't know how to do it.
No.
They want the vertical integration, they want the control, they want the profit, but they just don't know how to do it.
I think part of the big thing is, and this is something that years ago I learned in sales, you cannot sell something you don't understand. Right. You have a lot of people at these companies that do not understand geek culture, that are not geeks themselves, that didn't grow up reading comic books. They're just put in a position and they're supposed to sell Black Panther, knowing nothing about the history. And sure, they can read Wikipedia, but these people didn't experience it. They weren't running to the drugstore, spinning around a rack of comics to get the latest thing, grabbing a popsicle and spending your summers doing that, which is probably most of us here and people listening in the chat. Hail to the chat. Like it's so clear to me. And I had a friend, this is before The Force Awakens came out. I had a friend who regularly did work at Skywalker Ranch, working on DVD production and whatnot. And I was obviously, like everybody else, I was very enthusiastic and excited about Force Awakens, the Star Wars sequels, as were we all at the time. And I asked him, how do you think it's going to be? And he says, think it's going to be great. He says, I don't have faith that this team is going to be able to pull it off. And it's just because he knew the people who worked there. And there are many people, and then later told me information where basically the people that were being hired didn't even know what Star Wars was. He repeated a story to me about a woman who had just been hired in some corporate paper pushing position of marketing or whatever, and basically like, well, I better watch these Star Wars movies if I'm going to be working on them. That was a quote from someone who had recently been hired at Lucasfilm, a young woman. Now, I'm going to tie this into a thing, but trust me, I'm bringing it back to the main point. The latest Bud Light controversy with Dylan Mulvaney, you may or may not have heard about.
Oh, yeah.
It. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. Some video leaked of the woman who was in marketing saying her big thing, Bud Light, which to me is it's sort of like a choice when you're on a plane and they say, they ask you, would you like a soda? I want a Coke. Is Pepsi okay? Fine. Bud Light is fine.
Yeah.
It's not my go-to, but if I can't get the beer I want, Bud Light is fine. It's like club soda with beer flavoring. Okay, just a hint of beer flavor, but it's basically like drinking water. In any case, but it's fine. And Bud Light is a blue-collar, working man's brand because it's a cheap beer. You can get a 30-pack for $20. It's
Are you talking about where she said something about it had too much of a? It's like too much of a frat brand or something like that. Was what she said?
Well, the thing is this:
she said it was a declining brand. She needed to find a new market for it.
Somebody said she wanted younger drinkers, which is promoting alcohol consumption from minors, which is not what the brand should be.
That was what I was wondering, because I thought she was the same one who said something about it being seen as a frat brand, like fraternity brand. So how much younger can you get than that?
But let Chris continue, because I'm sure.
Sorry, Chris.
With it.
Back to my point here is clearly she has no understanding of the market. As a category, alcohol is being consumed less by young people, of legal age. They just don't like beer as much. They don't like alcohol as much. As a category, it's just selling less. And also, so the market has shifted. In addition, soda sales have dropped because people buy, what do they buy? They buy water in bottles. Okay. Which is why like both Coke and Pepsi all have their own water brands. So rather than expanding or solidifying that blue collar market, she's going after a market that doesn't care about it to begin with at all. She has I guarantee she's never been to a dive bar where they sell Bud Light as like one of their, you look on tap, what do you see? You see 5 beers and one of them is Bud Light, and you'll see that at a dive bar. I guarantee that woman's never been to one. Never. You look at her and that's the thought. And Bud Light also affiliated with some of the best and most entertaining ad campaigns in commercial history. If I might remind you of the Bud Frogs, right?
Bud
Frogs,
the
Clydesdales, which was always entertaining and whatnot. There was
heartwarming too sometimes.
Heartwarming, yeah. The Bud Bowl. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah.
I cared about who won the Bud Bowl. It was stop motion animation of the Bud Light going up against Bud. They would cut in like it was a real game and they'd tell you the score. It was dumb. It was funny as hell. And I think that we need to get these brands need to understand, just entertain us. And by the way, I'm selling you Doritos or I'm selling you beer, something you probably already buy, but we thought we would give you a moment of entertainment.
Don't forget what's up.
I will say this past Super Bowl had fewer lecture-based commercials. They kind of backed off on it. Not that there were any real standouts for commercials, but they sort of backed off on the lecturing a bit. But bringing this all back to Star Wars, what you've done is you've hired people in positions, and those people in those positions are fulfilling a role, and they could just as easily be selling Bud Light as they could be selling Star Wars. But you know who understood Star Wars? George Lucas. He was involved in the toys. The thing that was the red flag to me about Star Wars and Disney's involvement, the thing that was, Real Men of Genius. That was a great.
I have that CD collection and the Was Up and everything. But yeah,
the Was Up is great. All that stuff is great. So The thing that was the red flag to me is, I don't know if you recall, but before The Force Awakens came out, they had a thing at toy stores and Target, among places. They had Force Friday, which was Friday, and they opened the stores at midnight. So Target at midnight was open, and they had you wait in a line. There was a giant line, and you went to look at the new toys for The Force Awakens, these reveals. And I remember going in, and you know what I did? I didn't buy one thing, because I looked at these toys and I thought, why do they look so cheap? Why do these 12-inch figures, they look like they're stuffed into a coffin? They're not like in action poses. It was the cheapest, garbage looking, just knock it off, get it out and slap a sticker on it. That's actually a thing in the toy industry, where they just take a pre-existing toy like a Frisbee, put a Star Wars sticker on it, and it's a Star Wars Frisbee. It was that bad. And when the toys were bad, I said, huh.
There was actually a joke of that once. I think it was Bill Murray was on Letterman or something like that, and they were talking about the because at that point they didn't realize how big of a hit Ghostbusters were going to be. They didn't have any merchandise, so Bill Murray starts pulling out quote unquote Ghostbusters merchandise. It's exactly what you said. It's a fly swatter and a Frisbee and a cup and all this other like really lame shit.
I'd love to see that clip. In any case, just the thing is Disney, like the Borg, absorbs IPs and destroys them. It gentrifies them. It adds inclusivity, diversity where it's really not necessary. And those are just corporate buzzwords that people just say to each other to so that you're down with the plan. But everything we saw out of Star Wars Celebration, and I know we'll get to that, we're not quite there yet, but just felt hollow, corporate, and soulless. That is where Disney Star Wars is. We'll get to specific things to discuss.
Yeah, actually, let's wrap up the Mario Brothers with this.
Sorry, guys.
No, it's fine. The big thing right now going on, and I think Andre has a video of this coming out, is just the copium that's happening in the between people like